Hello everyone, Steven here from Adolescence and welcome back to another video. And in this video, I'm going to be making some fragrance recommendations for the holiday season of 2014. When I was 10 years old, my mother bought me my first bottle of cologne, which is CHEAPIES by Calvin Klein. And here we are 16 years later, and the giving of gifts during the holiday season is just as popular as it was a couple decades ago, if not more popular. So these fragrance recommendations are for the men in your life. From your teenage son perhaps up to your father or grandfather who has been through it all. When I make a fragrance recommendation, there are usually a couple of things that I look out for: originality and price. Many a time have I received a bottle of Davidoff's Cool Water or Liz Claiborne Curve for Christmas, and although those are great fragrances, they do happen to be very old, some of which happen to be more than 20 years old. So even though they're nice fragrances, I wouldn't recommend somebody buy those fragrances for somebody, because chances are you've probably smelled either one or both of those fragrances on loved ones or people who you have met in your life. So for these fragrance recommendations, I'm keeping it to fragrances that are less than a year old. So you can guarantee that these fragrances are current, they're not going to be worn by many other people, and your significant other will be likely to be intrigued by them. Another thing that I look out for when I make a fragrance purchase for someone else is price. You don't want to pay too much, but at the same time you don't want to pay too little for a bottle of fragrance either. If you pay too much, you risk buying a product that they might not like, and you've invested so much money into it, you feel like that money has been wasted because of that. So you're basically buying them a product that's going to sit on their shelves and they're never going to put it to any use. However, if you spend too little for a bottle of fragrance, you also risk buying something that they might not like, because if it's cheap, it's usually put together using very cheap ingredients and inferior ingredients. So the fragrances in this list are designer fragrances for the most part, and they can be found for $30 to $70. And of course the flexibility in that lies in the fact that you can really pick and choose which size you want to buy for them. So if you like one fragrance over the other, you can buy a smaller size, which would result in a cheaper price. Lastly, if you are intrigued by, or if you are interested in purchasing any of the fragrances that I mentioned in this list, I will leave a link for each one of them in the description section below, so please make sure you check that out, click the links, and those are all websites from which you can purchase them. And now, without further ado, let's get into the list. The first fragrance recommendation that I would like to make is perhaps for a teenager in your life. So if you have a teenage son or a nephew or a family friend for whom you just want to buy a fragrance for the holidays, I think that this is a perfect fragrance to buy. Also, it happens to be an upgrade from one of these things. So if you know that he wears Axe or Tag or Bod and you just can't get enough of it and it's suffocating you and giving you asthma attacks, you can put this off to the side. This is not as inexpensive of an option, but it is a great option. This is by Lacoste, and this is their brand new fragrance called Lacoste Live. So you can find this in department stores. Of course, I'll leave a link in the description section below. This is a really nice fragrance with a very youthful and contemporary appeal to it. It has notes of lime and gaiac wood and a musk note in the base that gives off a very fresh feeling. Even though the lime note is not very natural smelling, it is a different smelling fragrance, and it stands out a little bit from its other counterparts in the designer industry. So it has a great combination of notes. I think it smells very youthful without smelling juvenile or immature, and it certainly is an upgrade. It's a great scent for a teenager. The next fragrance that I would recommend is for someone a little bit older, so maybe a college student up to somebody in their late 20s or early 30s, for your boyfriend, husband, or fiance. So if you're tired of him wearing the drugstore colognes and you want to recommend something a little bit better, or you want to buy something, an upgrade for him if you will, I think that this is a perfect fragrance to buy, and I'll tell you a little bit about it. This is by a company called Glen Perry, and this fragrance is called Unpredictable Adventure. For this fragrance you will have to look online. It's hard to find this one in stores, but this is a great fragrance that I would recommend. There's a very popular and very expensive fragrance called Creed Aventus, and that fragrance sells for well over $300. This fragrance is a clone of that fragrance. It's not a carbon copy, they don't smell exactly the same, but it is a very cheaper alternative to Creed Aventus. So what you get from this fragrance is a beautiful fruity opening with pineapple, apple, black currant, a little bit of bergamot in there to give this citrus freshness in the opening, and then you have a smoky nuance which adds a contemporary masculine quality to the composition. It doesn't smell dated, it doesn't smell overly mature, it still smells very youthful, but at the same time it has an air of sophistication about it. And then as it starts to dry down, you have a rosy quality that comes out which really brings forth some sensuality to the composition, and then it dries down to some masculine woods and a bit of either amber or vanilla, which gives forth a very sweet smell that's not cloyingly sweet. It's a great fragrance and a perfect recommendation that I would make for somebody in their late 20s to early 30s. The last fragrance in this list that I would like to recommend is for someone a little bit mature. Maybe your father, your grandfather, your uncle, or even somebody a little bit younger than that. I can see this fragrance working really well for someone in their 30s up to somebody perhaps in their 60s. So this is a great fragrance for a more mature individual, but at the same time, this is not a dated smelling fragrance. So it doesn't have fir or oak moss or pine needles or the type of smell that you're used to smelling from like Dracar Noir and Polo and Quorum. This is a more youthful smelling fragrance, and it's a different, unique composition, but it also has a very mature and sophisticated and even elegant feel to it. This is by Bulgari. This is their newest release, and this fragrance is called Man in Black. This is an amazing fragrance that opens up with a very classic spicy introduction. You have pink pepper, you have black pepper, but again, they're not overwhelming to the senses. You also have a leather nuance in the mid, which really brings forth that air of sophistication to the composition. But you also have a little bit of sweetness in there provided by the tonka bean note. This is a great upscale, refined, sophisticated, mature scent, all the while not smelling dated or played out or anything like that. And the older gentleman in your life, the one who's been through it all, will certainly appreciate and love this fragrance. It happens to be one of my personal favorites. So there you have it. These have been my fragrance recommendations for the holiday season of 2014 going into 2015. If you own or have tried any of these fragrances, please let me know what you think by leaving a comment down below. Also, make sure to visit this video once again after you have made these purchases. Let me know how they have worked for the men in your life. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to leave a comment down below, shoot me a message, and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. And of course, please don't forget to rate and subscribe for future videos and frequent giveaways. This has been Steven with another video from Redolessence. Thank you for watching. Happy holidays.